Good evening. Welcome to our Board of Trustees meeting this afternoon. Started to say this evening, but hopefully it doesn't get that long. We'd like to open our meeting this afternoon with the Pledge of Allegiance led by, I believe it's our high school girls. Thank you, David.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so very much. I don't know what this is. This is the
January School Board Appreciation Month in North Carolina. School board members play a vital role in our community throughout the state. They spend countless hours of their time and talents for the achievement of public education. Thank you for all you do for NCSD, and our students will give out our appreciation. So sweet.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I think I just killed my view. Thank you so much. Tammy, for your information, the students just recognized the whole board. So thank you so much for doing that. That was so kind. And with that, I will call the meeting to order. And I do believe we have a quorum. Yes. And at this time, we need to make some amendments to the agenda. There will be in number 8 under new business. We will look at the approval of insurance coverage for the Board of Trustees. We will also look at approval for the RFP for capital projects. In number 9, we will be looking at a policy approval amendment to policy 2302. We will also look at our parental plan, which will be 1310 and 4002. Is there any other adjustments? Okay. So please make those changes to your agenda. And at this time, we would like to recognize our students of the month. Ms. White and Mr. Autry are going to present those now.
All right, our on paper, sorry. Okay. Our pre-K student of the month is Xander Tavares, but he is today's student and has gone home, so we will make sure he gets his certificate. K through second grade is KO Surgeon. Grades 3 through 5 is Samuel Alexander. Six through 8 is Josiah Peterson. There must be another, 6 through 8, Gwendolyn Lopez. Gwendolyn is going to the next enrollment competition. Okay.
Good. That's wonderful.
9 through 12, there's 2 students, Tania Cordoza and Madison Harrell. Madison, decided to stay back, but Kenya is at the competition. Okay, great.
Good.
We'll get their certificates
Good.
to them soon.
Thank you very much for getting this together for us. And I would also, at this time, like to congratulate our boys basketball team for placing third at the Mason-Dixon. Are the coaches here or any of the boys here? That's wonderful. Yeah. And our cheerleaders, I understand, did very well in the competition also. So to any of those here, yay. We do appreciate all of you participating in these athletic events, and I can tell you from experience, Mason-Dixon is great. Lots and lots. And our recognition of Department of the Month, we are a little bit late on celebrating January, so we will be celebrating January Department of the Month tomorrow. And next board meeting, we will recognize our next department. Okay, now, minutes. We have 4 sets of closed session minutes to approve, and I'm going to read them by date, but unless you have a specific objection, you'll approve those 4 on time. They are from September the 19th, November 7th, and these are all 2024, and December 24th. 3, 4, 8, 7, and January 9th is the other. So do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Those 4 sets of closed session minutes? Tammy? Jimmy? Okay, and Tammy has seconded those. All in favor of approving those 4 sets of minutes, make it known by raising your hand. And those are approved. January 9th, minutes for regular session. Those. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes from last month? So moved. Mickey has made a motion. Is there a second? Okay. And all in favor, please raise your hand. All right. Thank you very much for those approvals. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our esteemed attorney, Mr. Chris Campbell.
Very good. This is Chris. And thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to everyone. So the good news is that we are not talking about the General Assembly anymore. We're talking about business as usual. So the first business as usual issue to deal with is insurance and looking at insurance coverage for the school and for the Board of Trustees. I have provided each of the board members an analysis of insurance coverage and I will just hit briefly the high points. This will be an action item later in your meeting today. So first of all, a couple of things I want to remind the board of pursuant to Senate Bill 382, effective immediately. You have additional immunities extended to you that are provided to the State Board of Education, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, local boards of education, local administrative units, and any of their members and employees. So you are entitled to all of the public immunities that both local school boards, local school employees, and the state board and their employees have as well. Those immunities include public official immunity from state causes of action and also qualified immunity from federal causes of action. You also have coverage, and so do your employees, under the North Carolina Defense of State Employees Act. This is an act that basically applies to any employee, any trustee, as long as you are acting in the course and scope of your position and that you do not act in malice or in bad faith of any way whatsoever. And then, of course, the school is also covered by the Tort Claims Act because you are a state entity. So you also have sovereign immunity, except to the extent that something is waived by the Tort Claims Act. Wallace asked a wonderful question of me the other day. He said, if there were to be a lawsuit and these immunities did not apply against the school, or there were to be a judgment, ultimately, who would have to satisfy that judgment? Well, obviously, the state would look to you and your resources first, but ultimately, it would be a judgment against the state of North Carolina and against the state treasury. And if the governor couldn't come up with the money, then the General Assembly would have to look at it. So you are a state agency, and that's a good thing when it comes to ultimate liability as far as judgments. What you're going to look at later this evening is considering purchasing additional insurance. And you would ask yourself, well, why do we want to have additional insurance? Well, the first reason is that insurance policies will pay for attorneys. And right now, any attorney fee cost to defend a lawsuit would come out of your local budget. So it would be nice to have an insurance policy that would pay cost of attorney's fees. You may be wondering why the Attorney General wouldn't defend you. In North Carolina, certain agencies have assigned attorney generals and they pay for those attorney generals. So it's not free for the larger entities that have an assigned attorney general. The North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services would have its own allocated designated AGs. The Department of Public Instruction has its own assistant attorney generals, but they pay for those attorneys every year as part of their budget with the state. So the policy that you have in front of you for an additional $1 million in coverage, it would cost $13,034 would be the annual premium that you would need to pay for that additional $1 million. This can be paid out of the $120,000 additional appropriation that you received from the General Assembly. Again, with many thanks to Hugh Blackwell and all his work on your budget side. So that could be paid from that allocation. The policy, just briefly, is called a Leaders Risk Protection Policy, and it has two primary coverages. The first coverage is an errors and omission insurance that covers the entity and all of your employees for any wrongful acts, and then a second coverage for employment practices. I think everyone knows there are so many state and federal employment laws that it's nice to have an additional employment coverage through an insurance company. So under the E&O, or errors and omissions, as we call it, there are two different coverages. One is for individuals, you as trustees, and your employees. That is what is commonly referred to as directors and officers insurance. The state does not give you additional protection as an individual beyond the Defense of State Employees Act. So it is nice to have D&O coverage on top of that for your senior officials and for you as trustees. In fact, Ms. Eileen Townsend, who is in charge of insurance for DPI, recommends that you get the D&O insurance. And again, this is the policy that the Eastern School for the Deaf has in place right now. So that would cover you. There's a $25,000 retention or a deductible, but other than that, it's the $1 million of coverage that provides. Then there's coverage for indemnifying any loss that the school might incur. Then there's paying damages under coverage C of a third party who claims that they've been damaged by the wrongful act of an employee or by one of the trustees. And then, of course, there are certain limitations and exclusions. Under damages, the policy will pay out both compensatory damages, which are generally out-of-pocket damages, and punitive damages as well. But for any IEP case, there's a 50% co-insurance. So you would have to pay 50% of any payout for educational services in an IEP case. That is federal law, so it's real important to remember you do not have immunity as a school from a federal law lawsuit. So if an administrative law judge said that you had $200,000 in educational expenses to pay for a child, you would be on the hook for the full $200,000. This would give you attorney fees coverage and would also give you $100,000, the 50% co-insurance to apply toward those damages. So it would pay for itself with one special education lawsuit, basically, if there were to be a payout. There's a whole list of exclusions, which I won't go through, but most of them, when you read through the list, you can understand why they are exclusions. A lot of them have to do with intentional bad acts, sexual misconduct, things of that nature that would be covered under an employment policy unless the acts were intentional. Then the employment practices also then covers the school, covers damages, and also provides you with some additional resources as well. So the only thing it doesn't cover, I just wanted to make sure I pointed this out, is it does not cover any kind of cyber claims. So that would be something that your IT department would want to look at, is cyber. At CYBER, crimes committed over the internet, ransomware. I think everybody knows what ransomware is, when somebody captures your network and then demands a ransom before they'll release it. Incidentally, the state SBI, the FBI are excellent in dealing with ransomware attacks. The Burke County schools had one almost 2 years ago now, and they were able to rebuild their system and they didn't pay a penny. So the state swooped in with its SWAT team and they were able to get the Burke County schools right back up and running. So government entities are getting good at responding to those. But if you want to look at a policy to cover those kinds of electronic issues, that would be separate. I think that there recently was a breach of PowerSchool, and PowerSchool being the vendor that housed student information, it impacted a large, substantial group of public entities, of educational entities in North Carolina. There were not the kinds of information, though, that would compromise someone's bank account immediately. But PowerSchool, since it was their fault, they're a private company, they're actually paying for and providing credit monitoring and protection for everyone who was involved. So it's complicated. When you talk about electronic crimes, that would be something that I think Wallace and his committee would want to look at down the road to see if you wanted that additional coverage. I'll save you the question. Yes, I do recommend that for $13,000, you purchase an additional $1 million of coverage because of the limitations on defense costs with the state, and because this day and age, when there are disagreements and problems, it is usually settled through insurance. That's the way disputes get settled. So I do recommend that you purchase this insurance. I don't see a reason for you to do more than $1 million, given the services and the types of services you provide to students and the immunities that you have on top of that. I'm comfortable with me. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the approval of the RFP, or we gonna do that in business?
Why don't we do that in new business?
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Kemp, for doing that, and thank you very much to Representative Blackwell for making available to the board the funds to purchase this insurance. That came through 382. So we're ready for the director's report. Doctor?
Director, we have 63 students currently. That includes one new 3-year-old that started on Monday. We anticipate another 3-year-old to start next Monday. And then we have a 4-year-old with an IEP placement pending in Kirk County. And 2 additional middle school students in process. I was going to mention that our boys won 3rd place in Mason Dixon tournament as well. And that we had a group at a vet's drum competition in Georgia. We also have 2 teachers presenting at the North Carolina Council of Exceptional Children today and tomorrow. As far as personnel is concerned, we have 7 positions open, including superintendent and principal, a couple teacher positions, and per the HR committee meeting, or the committee recommendations, we have looked at our salary reserve and we have funds and are able to move our interpreters to 12 months this year as appropriate. And we're also looking at salary worksheets to determine additional enhancements for a couple of our current positions. But we anticipate being able to do that this year as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Congratulations to all of our student participants again. It's great. And very proud to have 2 teachers presenting at the conference. That's wonderful. As we look at positions and equities and such, congratulations to our interpreters for getting up to 12 months. So, anything else, Dr. Todd? This has just been an evening of good news. That's wonderful. So, new business, we will take up, we need to approve we're going to hire or contract?
So it would actually be approval of an RFP process. Would you like me to address that?
Yes.
Okay. Board members, so the other thing for you to consider tonight is how to handle going forward your extensive capital projects. And if I can get my computer to cooperate here. There we go. You have right now extensive projects going on here at the school from a capital funding standpoint. Just a quick reminder, you have water upgrades that are in the pre-design phase, funded at $1.5 million. You've got life safety upgrades, $1.5 million. Water pipe installation, $300,000. Renovation of your superintendent house, currently funded at the $2 million mark. Roof repairs at almost $4 million. An emergency generator that would cost $1.5 million. So all of these capital projects that you have going on that are in the millions of dollars, they require that you follow all North Carolina laws as far as selecting an architect or an engineer through a qualification process, going out to public bids, awarding those bids to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. You then have additional layers as a state agency about how you are going to draw this money down from the state of North Carolina. You'll be operating and integrating with the Office of Budget Management, with the Office of the State Controller. You've got all these requirements. Well, all of this doesn't just happen. And there are 2 amazing gentlemen at DPI that do this for public schools. And they've been doing it for you for years while you have been housed within DPI. I know that the transition with DPI has been rocky from time to time, but I can't say enough good things about these two gentlemen. They are fabulous. They are having video calls with the staffs of all three schools right now. And they have said, John Long is the head of DPI's capital construction, and John has said, we are with all three schools until June 30, 25. Okay? But after June 30 of 25, they're gone. And this is not the type of activity that a maintenance director would oversee and undertake. So they came up with a fabulous idea that I wholeheartedly endorsed. They will work with all three schools to develop a request for proposals. That request for proposals will go out to firms and individuals who would be qualified to be a capital project coordinator for you. So this would be someone who would oversee all of these millions of dollars in projects and would oversee statutory compliance and would oversee regulatory compliance with the state and how you pull the money down, how you apply for it. It is a very complicated process. Their idea is that the RFP would be generated during the month of February. It would go out on the street. All three schools could then evaluate the bidders, and you can bid one, two, or all three schools. So there's a real opportunity here that there may be a firm that is qualified to do this who could make an application or a bid to do this for all three schools, for the Governor Moorhead School, the Eastern School, and the School for the Deaf. So we'll have to wait and see what comes back. Then there would be a selection and a final decision made at the beginning of May, and that would give the firm approximately 6 to 8 weeks to work with these gentlemen from DPI to make it a smooth transition. So again, this is not something that I think your current staff has the time and frankly even the expertise, because it's always been done for you by folks that do have that expertise. So my recommendation tonight is that you approve a request for proposals to be issued, and that's it for tonight. We'll wait and see. You know, they may come back at a good price and you're happy with it. We may have to decide to do something else, but this is a first step to see who might be interested. So if you do not have that list of capital projects, all you need to do, I think just Tanya put it in the materials. Great. Okay, and it's a public document. So if anyone at the school wants to see all of the different capital projects that are currently in the hopper and how significant that work is, you certainly are entitled to that document. Happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have questions they want to ask? Dr. Tate has a question.
Yes, this is Chris. So the good news on your budget side is we now have confirmation through Hannah that the additional 120,000 that was allocated to you this year is permanent recurring funds. So you will not have to ask for that, okay? But in your budget submission that you're making right now, this is something that Wallace's committee will need to look at. Where does this fit in your budget going forward? And I have no idea how much somebody would charge for a service like this. I really don't. I'm as curious to see the proposals as you are. But yes, you'll have to come up, but it would be part of your additional request amount that you would make to the General Assembly. Yeah. And the one thing I don't know, and I do see Hannah, if that is final yet. Is the budget request to the state final yet, or is there still time to amend it?
Contract goes into place, we would need to look at labs in other areas.
Wallace, okay, you have another question? Wallace has a question. Wallace?
Hi, thank you. This is Wallace. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
All right, thank you. I wonder if it's possible to ask the individuals who are currently performing this function at DPI if they could give us, based on their expertise, just a rough estimate. Obviously, no one's going to hold them to it, but if we need to submit a budget request before we get the RFPs back, can we get a rough estimate for them to
Get a rough estimate.
add into a revised budget request?
So this is Chris. I think Wallace, what I heard Hannah just say is that there is a $120,000 amount for an engineer. So what I will do is I will relay that to them and see what they think about that number. That's point one. Point two is not only are these gentlemen going to help draft the RFP, they're going to sit at the table with your staff and evaluate all the bidders. So when a recommendation comes to you for services and price, those two gentlemen will be part of that recommendation.
Okay, that was my next question. And one last question, and I will cede the floor, is, I mean, are there other options or areas within the state organization that could perform this other than a third party? For example, what do other state agencies do? Do they all use third parties for this function?
That's an excellent question. They felt like that the question was, in case anyone didn't see or hear the question, is whether or not there's a different way to go other than hiring an outside third-party contractor. And the answer to that is they didn't think so, given the level of expertise that you need. But at the same time, that is something that we will look at depending on the bids. So, for example, if the bids are really, really high, then it may be time to pivot and see if all three schools could hire a W-2 employee to do that. And that's something I'm glad you brought that up. Going forward, even at our law firm, since we represent all three schools, we're going to constantly be asking the question, can one of you hire an employee and cost share that employee? Are they able to do that job for all three? So great idea. You might be able to hire a W-2 individual to do that work. Sure.
We already do that.
And you already do that in some
Yeah,
areas. Thank
do.
you, Madam Chair. Yes, you do.
McGinnis, Dr. McManus. Tammy's got a question.
Yeah, this is Tammy here. This discussion has made me think of the FEMA application and what happened to that. I know that we had submitted one, but I don't know if we've heard back from FEMA yet from the hurricane or the damage that happened. Did we ever hear back from our
I think that's a
application?
Hannah question. Hannah, would you?
So after watching webinars and being involved in conversation, the majority of our damage would not have been, for example, the trees that were not on the building. So we are working to get part of this cleaned up. And then as far as our buildings go, that would be something done through our insurance. But again, with everybody having this going on, it's just
Thank you. Other questions?
Dr. Tate, I've got one more. How many other types of jobs has DPI been covering and helping us with that will suddenly be gone at the end of fiscal year? And surprise, oh, here's one more thing that we now have to figure out how to make room in our budget for. So what other things do we not know?
This is Chris. That is an excellent question. And I think just through the initial reports and common sense, we knew that HR, business, and IT would be something that you would have to take in-house. And that process, with kudos to your staff, is going as well as it could go. They have the knowledge, they have the expertise. They literally needed access to software, access to programs. And I think, knock on wood, that that's coming along fairly nicely. But we're not concerned necessarily in those areas. The capital projects manager, I hope, is the only surprise. And again, hats off to these gentlemen, because I think they realized that no one understood but them how complicated this was. And they've been very proactive with the 3 schools. So the simple answer to your question is hopefully no more surprises.
And I would like to add to Chris's comment, this is Sandy, kudos to Hannah for foreseeing this and putting it in the budget request, because she showed that to me right before submission to the budget, and yay, thank you. So at this time, do we want to, is there any more discussion on this position? And
I'll give you a very easy motion.
should be a very easy motion. You want to make a motion?
Sure, Madam Chair, this is Chris. The very simple motion would be for someone to move that the administration be authorized to issue an RFP, request for proposals, for a capital projects coordinator. And you can say so moved.
Anyone want to do that? Jimmy says so moved. Second, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and that passes. So that is up to the administration to work through that and straighten that out. And I would like to add to what Mr. Campbell said. It may be advantageous to us to discuss with Governor Moorhead and Eastern if we could possibly jointly use a project manager. I think that's a very doable thing, knowing that we do that with Dr. McManus. So, okay. Now, we're going to vote on the insurance here.
Let's do it. Motion to approve the insurance quote at the $1 million level.
Sorry. Nobody heard that but me. Okay, now I would like to entertain a motion about the insurance, our supplemental proposal for insurance through Surrey. And hopefully everybody's got a copy of that policy. So at this time, you can either ask a question about it or we'll entertain a motion. Tammy?
Candy. I make a motion that we go ahead with Deputy's insurance. I forgot the specific name, but I do move that we move forward with that.
And this is Chris. Tammy, if you could just add at the $1 million, I think that's what you're
Yeah.
intending. If you'll just say at the $1 million coverage level as part of your motion.
I think she's added that. At the $1 million.
Okay. Sure. So I move that we purchase the $1 million insurance policy for the school. For the border, whichever.
Okay, do I have a second?
This is Jim.
Jimmy? Jimmy's second. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Chris, for finding that for us. Okay, at this time, we will begin to go through our committee reports. Wallace, Business and Finance. Pardon?
I'm sorry, it's still under, for me.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I was using my old copy. I apologize. Yes,
Jamie was going to say the same thing. Thank you, Sonia.
our, as a point of reference to our committee chairs, our school interpreters have made the very nice volunteer to come and interpret committee meetings in which they are not involved in. If they are involved with the committee or on the committee, they will not be interpreting that committee meeting. And as long as there is no conflict of interest. But they have come forward to offer that service to help save some money and to help with schedule. So we will be using those interpreters for committee meetings. Our board meetings will be interpreted by outside interpreters. Has anyone got any objections to that? Since most of our chairs are sitting here. Jimmy?
Jimmy. And Kenny's saying, Jimmy, go ahead. This is Jimmy. Depending on the committee, most of which sign up, maybe wouldn't necessarily need interpreters. So again, it's sort of, this is or that. I don't know. Is it really needed for a 1 hour meeting to have an interpreter there? I'm not sure from the interpreting perspective, what that would look like if that's a valid need.
Well, at this point in time, to answer that question, we'll always need an interpreter at the committee meetings to interpret for the note takers. And I see Tammy has a question.
Yes. I potentially see another issue with the committees, not related to interpreting, but just setting up the committee meetings. We need to clarify the role of the committee chair. Should they be the one that's setting up the meeting, or should the chair work with Tanya? And then Tanya send that out to the committee members and then submit like an invite for that. I just wanted to clarify, just so we can have it consistent across the board, how we're doing it for each committee's business. Interpreters, though, that fine. That's absolutely using school interpreters, no problem with that. But I'm just bringing up a second issue of just wanting to clarify. I don't want to put so much on Tanya's plate, but just wanted to put it out there. I've noticed that when we've sent out invites, sometimes, for example, on the parental committee, some parents seem to maybe didn't get the email or something. So I'm just wondering, what is the best way, about going about this? And even for specifically sending out the invite, that portion of it.
Well, this is Sandy, and I would advise all of our chairmen of committees to work very closely with Tanya about your schedules, your needs for those meetings, because Tanya is the one that always sends the notifications. And she needs to know exactly when those meetings will be. And she has a list of everybody that's on every committee. Kudos to you. But I would say that everybody needs to work very closely with Tanya in what we do in meetings. Tanya, you want to add something?
And this is Sonia, and if I can add, definitely as the chair of the committee, feel free to communicate with your committee members if you want to send out reminders about meetings. But it is very important for me to produce for public notice. It would be hard such a open meetings law so that I can publish on our website and announce and I can share a link. So it is very important that the initial invitation with information does come from me, but definitely feel free to communicate in any way you want with your committee members. I would just love to be with you so I can help support you.
Okay. Does that clarify things? Ray?
I also wanted to add something to what Tammy said for the parents rental committee. I never got an email for that. I did get an email from Tommy for that last meeting when I was asked to be put on that schedule. And then the reminder, that 30-minute reminder. But I didn't see that for the parental committee meetings until after the meeting. So, and I think some of the parents said the same thing. They didn't actually get that until after the meeting it came through. So Sandy's saying, were you using your NCSD email? Or he's saying yes, and I got it. And I got the invite that was sent out, but maybe there's just another way that we could do that. If email doesn't work, maybe also having a backup is like the calendar invite, so it could be there as well. And that way we're also kind of getting confirmation of who's coming because they can accept it via the calendar.
Okay, does that help? Okay. Thank you very much. That's a good question. Okay, Wallace, you got anything else in business?
Yes, just,
You haven't done anything in business.
no, but I'm ready if you're ready.
Welcome.
This is Wallace. Really just have two updates for the board. One is just as a reminder, at our last board meeting, we voted to delegate to the finance committee to work with the staff to finalize the budget submission. And so we did take that up in the last finance committee meeting. And after some good discussion among the committee members and the staff, ultimately voted to approve submitting a budget request that included an additional $860,000. And that included 6 line items. And then I'm going to circle back to some of these line items in a minute, but I'll first just list what those 6 line items were that made up the $860,000 additional funding request. The first line item was for transportation funding in the amount of $300,000 that currently had been funded by DPI. The second item was additional funding for the maintenance department of $100,000 per year. The third item was for recurring legal and insurance expenses of the board in the amount of $120,000 per year. The fourth item was to provide additional funding for physical therapy and occupational therapy in the amount of $100,000. The fifth item was, as we just discussed, an engineer, the cost for an engineer to replace this function that we're losing from DPI support in the amount of $120,000. And then lastly, some funding to move some of the 10-month positions to an 11-month position to enable us to fill some other critical roles on our staff. So that was in the amount of $120,000.
Could you say that 6 line item again? I apologize.
Moving some of our positions from 10-month positions to 11-month positions to enable us to better hire some of the key roles on the staff. That was a $120,000 line item. So those were the 6 line items that totaled $860,000. I would just note, importantly, that after that approval at that committee meeting, Hannah provided an update to the board that 2 of those line items appear to be already included in the legislation, as I understand it. And if Hannah's still there, she can maybe provide clarity. But the $300,000 for transportation and the $120,000 for the board legal and insurance expenses were already in the legislation as we understand it. And so if you back those out, then the incremental funding request would be $320,000 or $420,000 less. So that would be a $440,000 additional funding request. I'm doing my math correctly.
Think you did that well.
Happy to entertain any questions, but those were the two updates that I had. Or or corrections and clarifications from Hannah or anybody else.
Does anybody have any questions of Waltz or Hannah for the budget? Hannah's got I hope it's not a question.
It's not a question, it's just a clarification. What you pointed out earlier, that was not me looking to just add that. We've been talking about it for probably 2 years. It was one of those transition questions that we just didn't know until recently. But I also wanted to clarify the reason it was suggested that a firm instead of an individual W-2. So for example, our maintenance department, they have all kinds of specialties. There's an electrician, there's a plumber, there's a painter, there's contractors. And so if we go with a firm, they have those subject matter experts within that firm versus if you just hire one W-2 employee, they may not have all of that knowledge. So that was the reason behind the contract versus the individual.
That's great. Thanks for that clarification. Any other questions? Wallace, does that conclude your report?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And policies, Ms. Weiss?
Yes, originally we were going to look today at the 4,000 policy series. The policy committee has not been very busy recently because Chris and his firm have lots of things to do related to schools affected by the hurricane. So they have not sent me and my committee a lot of stuff to do, but I think that's about to change. Nothing like reading policies to put you to sleep at night. And I have some problems sleeping, so I'm a great person for this talk. So we will get started on that quite soon.
Yes,
Yeah, okay,
yes, and I'm happy to address that
okay.
quickly, if you'd like me to. Okay, this is Chris. And yes, as we said, we're now going to turn our attention to the 4,000 series. And I will not call it Hurricane Candace because that would be inappropriate, but Dr. Tate has agreed to jump in there with us and look at all of the student policies to help us prioritize which ones are the most important for the school. So we will thank you to Dr. Tate. She'll be helping us prioritize those. Then we will get them to Ms. White's committee, and you will very shortly have some policies to come forward with. The only policy that I do need to address this evening is the policy on remote meetings, the 2302. And Madam Chair, you might help me. Is now the time to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we have already, as a committee and as a board, we have already approved 2302, which deals with remote participation in board meetings, which, as you see here, it's an every meeting thing for us. But when we approved it, we knew that there were going to be just a few tweaks that needed to be made to make it appropriate for a group of members and audience and stakeholders that include both deaf and hearing. So I had Rachel Skipper, who is the director of our interpreting services. She looked at this with me. She's also on our committee. And basically what we have done is in every instance where it talks about being heard, whether the board member can be heard, the audience member can be heard, the remote person who's joined the meeting remotely, when it says can be heard, we have added heard/seen to make it appropriate for our group and our audience. We also have said as to be able to participate remotely, you must be able to be seen if you're the person that's not present at the meeting, and you should keep your camera on at all times because that is only in good etiquette for our deaf folks.
And the other thing that we added, and Paula very sweetly chimed in to help me because we were just struggling. There's a list of conditions and requirements for remote participation, things such as illness, out-of-town travel, lack of childcare, emergency illness. But we felt like we needed to add something because we have members who regularly cannot come to our meetings, and like Tammy, because she's out of state. So we have just added a J to that section and saying the member is a full-time resident of another state is an acceptable reason to participate remotely, as well as all the other conditions that were listed.
Okay, Chris is going to.
And this is Chris. We already had business obligations and other things as acceptable reasons to participate remotely. So it's not just being out of state. And we want to be sensitive to members that do not live in the Morganton area that are providing expertise. So that's one of the reasons as well. The only other change that I recommend tonight, and I think it would be appropriate for a motion to amend the policy to add both of these things. The first is the full-time resident of another state being one of the acceptable reasons for joining remotely. And then the second is I would like to clarify that for any electronic meeting, they will not be wholly electronic meetings. There's been a court case in which the Court of Appeals ruled that really meetings where every single member of the board is remote can only be done during a state of emergency. So looking at that case, the rationale in that case, moving forward, my recommendation is that we also make an adjustment that there will always be at least one trustee in a physical location that is noticed and accessible to the public for the full duration of the meeting. So there will always be at least one trustee, for example, in this room if others had to join remotely. Now, we can have some discussion about that. You could say that you want a majority of the trustees to always be together. But when it comes to voting trustees, that means all three of you would really always need to be here. So I'm comfortable with at least one trustee always being in a physical location so that the public can join in a physical location as well.
Okay. Comment?
This is Candace. So voting members, do non-voting members count?
So the General Assembly, remember, clarified it that a quorum is a majority of the voting members. So,
So
yes.
it sounds like it needs to be a voting member.
So we could say that it needs to be a voting member who is in the physical location, and I think that's an excellent addition. Yes. Agreed.
Okay,
Yeah, so Tammy,
Tammy's got a
I think
question.
Tammy had something.
Tammy, do you have a question?
Yeah, this is Tammy. So when I was looking at the parent planning policy and looking at other schools and looking at their policies and posting on their websites and their manuals, I'm just wondering if we are planning to do the same, to post our manual on the website and put our policies out there to the employees, to the public. I'm just wondering if we are going to have that for transparency reasons.
This is Chris. Dr. Weiner, your timing is impeccable. Just today, Tanya and I, and also Dr. Tate, had that exact conversation. Hannah is going to look with Tanya's assistance into the cost of the School Boards Association hosting your policy manual. They do that for a lot of school boards, or your IT staff can create a policy site just for your policies. So that is in the works. And you now have enough policies that we definitely need to roll them out to your parents, your employees, and the community.
Thank you.
Questions or discussions?
Will you take a vote?
Okay. I need a motion that we submit this policy to be published with the
changes as we have discussed.
One question. We want to say one trustee?
One voting trustee.
Okay.
At least.
At least one voting trustee. Yeah.
Correct.
You or I one will sludge to the weather.
Can walk over here if I have to.
Okay,
Jamie says that's fine, good wording.
so we will have that as there will be always at least one voting member present for each meeting
In the physical location.
in the physical location.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there any more discussion on this? If not, can I get a motion to amend?
And it's to add both things, the
Yeah.
full-time resident and the physical location.
And Nikki just asked for that motion, so go ahead.
Could I have a motion that we submit this policy as it has been,
Final approval as amended.
as amended? Thank you.
Sure. And I can make a motion.
Motion.
I do. I make a motion.
Sandy, do I have a second? Jenny, second. All in favor, raise your hand.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
good job. Okay. Human Resources Committee, Dr. Tate.
Yeah, this is Dr. Peggy. Really, I have nothing to add. I'll hold all of my, for the
Okay.
closed session. Thank you very much.
All right. Marketing, Mr. Autry.
Yeah, it's Jenny. So we had a meeting, the marketing committee. We had our first meeting, and it was a morning meeting. Some people on the committee wanted morning. I'm a morning person, so I was fine with that. But with our first meeting, we had a discussion about having subcommittees. And the folks who were involved in the meeting, you know, they'll select who's going to be on their subcommittee, probably 4 to 5 people per subcommittee. And we'll be deciding what subcommittees that we're going to have. We are going to have another meeting on March 4th. That's our next meeting, 8:15 a.m.
Be there.
Okay, just saying, I'll be there. He says, that's early, Jimmy, that's early. And yes, Jamie, it is early.
No.
All good?
And in case the audience was wondering, Jimmy and I have different time frames. Okay, thank you, Jimmy. Student Behavior Health Committee, Dr. Tate.
This is Dr. Tate. And yes, Tate
8 volts.
Bolts. She and I have been co-chairing this. This is a new committee. Specifically for student mental behavioral health. That's the focus of that committee. And so our first meeting was today at 1:30, where we did introductions and kind of got to know everyone. And this committee will cover sort of in broad scope, everything from student trauma response, ET, that behavioral trauma response assessment and management, if I got it right, and in general, just student mental health and how students are, able to interact and making sure that they're supported and that they have, good mental health and good emotional health as they continue to grow and develop appropriately. And then, IEP behavioral recovery support. So our committee is not going to be working with students one-on-one or specific individuals or anything like that. Our work is really going to be looking at an oversight kind of capacity at the general systems in place, where are there gaps, where there anything, areas that need more support or policies that we need to develop, and how can we collaborate with other agencies, committees, et cetera. So that's just sort of the general overview of what we talked about today. And we will be meeting monthly, in a regular monthly meeting. And as we do that, we'll go more in depth, explaining our role and responsibilities in supporting the school and the students here for their behavioral mental health. So we're really excited. That's obviously my heart and passion, as I am a psychologist. So very excited to be working in this field of things, and how, I just have a vision for how we can move forward in the future. So very excited for this.
Thank you very much. The ASL Policy Committee, Dr. Tate, either of you want to present?
Was paying attention. Sorry. I thought I was done. Okay, so is that Key, if Key wants to come up, want to introduce yourself? But we are proposing to the board a new policy, it's our confidentiality and visual communication policy. We have been working very hard on developing this policy, and I guess in just a summary, we have been able to identify and recognize the visual nature of ASL. And how easy it can be to see something that is said, maybe from afar, or just in a glance. And it's not always easy to see who can see what you were saying. And, when you're trying to have confidential conversations, maybe you're talking with a student, and you don't realize that everybody else is, being able to see what you were saying, just because of the setting of where you are. So that can be a serious issue, and something we need to be aware of in breaking confidentiality. So we really want to emphasize the importance of this policy. It's just really to be forefront in everybody's mind that confidentiality is important. You're having a confidential discussion with somebody, go into an office, make sure there's a closed door, close the lines, those kinds of things. So it is really a critical policy that we want to put before the board for vote.
Thank you. Those two policies that we need to approve this evening are 1200, which is the confidential visual policy, and also have 1210. 1210.
And I can elaborate on both of those if you'd like me to. Okay. 1210.
No,
So this is Chris. I think that Tanya and Paula got together to look at policies and the minutes and determined that 1210 had already been approved. It was just a matter of making a few changes that were delegated back to
What I
you.
had thought, thank you. That's what I had thought. So I was like, okay, cool.
I'm sorry. So do what I told.
Thank you.
I do too.
And Timmy said the same thing as well.
Okay, so we need to approve 1200. Now, do we need to do anything to 1210 since there were some changes made?
Candy's got some made after.
We did not make any
Well, this is
changes.
Tammy. I was about to make a motion, but
Okay,
to accept the policy, the
Yes.
confidentiality and Policy. The
I'll get there.
1200.
You're fine. Okay. So all in favor of approving the ASL policy 1200, let me have a motion, please.
Tammy just made a motion.
Tammy,
just made a
okay.
motion.
Yeah, Tammy made the motion. Is there a second? Okay. Any more discussion on 1200? If not, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, and that passes. And that takes us to you, Dr. Warner, for parental plan.
This is Tammy here. Is Dr. Todd still with us? She in the audience? We're back. Okay, wonderful, great. She and I both wanted, to put this before the board or as a policy to, vote for approval on. We were making some changes to the policy. The first being we wanted to take out some of the information that really didn't apply to our school, talking about the title, the different titles related to certain policies that didn't apply to NCSD, and add, Dr. Todd actually wanted to add talking about a reporting or annual reporting, and that we would need to extend that to, and I'm trying to remember the right word. Was it 2026, 2027? Dr. Todd, please, if you would maybe give me I don't have the policy in front of me at the moment, but either way, the parents had asked why, and Dr. Todd explained that she wanted to add that part. And Dr. Todd, do you want to explain that again now?
Yes, sure. There's a portion of the parental involvement policy that addresses screen notification and school report cards and student achievement information, and runs our ability that will start the 27-28 school year for us, because we're the transition that to government. Working with the schools, and that was a change. And then, as Tammy said, we took out anything that didn't apply. Took out the word system, because we did borrow a lot of this from already established framework.
I'm sorry, Dr. Todd. We're just struggling to hear a little bit. Do I want to hear your titles?
We did take out moving from the word system and made it applicable to PSDs, basically. And finally, we added community services available in a such as format. That would be North Carolina Division of Services for Deaf and Hearing, beginning, and edX, early hearing detection. Those are just a few resources.
This is Tammy. So that policy has been shared with the board. Tanya has sent that out to everybody this morning. You should all have a copy of that. Haven't looked it over, please look it over. We highlighted those changes. We are seeking parent input, feedback from two parents and others, and we are looking at making some there were some additional changes. But we would like the board to go ahead and approve this so that we can go ahead and post it for now, just temporarily in the school Google site, not the website. And just because the IT team has decided not to continue with the current what is it? It's the well, that website program vendor that they're looking at starting to use a different user-friendly system. And so we'll be looking at getting a new vendor, and so all of that's gonna change in the website, and so I just thought for now, we can use the schools Google site. That way families can still access it and see it, and then we can add links there. And that's, with the different resources that we've mentioned for the parents and for their benefit, we can have them linked in those documents in the Google site, so those web pages won't continue. That way they'll continue to work. So I'm thinking we'll also maybe work with the marketing committee some as well. It's still in process, but that's sort of what we're looking for as we move forward.
Okay.
And also, for the subcommittees, they are working so diligently on this. Melissa Shoemate and Jason Tuck, as well as Jana Lawless, are part of our subcommittee, and they have really been putting a lot of time and effort into this. And so we're hoping that the board will go ahead and approve these policies, and then once we do so, they can be uploaded.
Dr. Weiner, we appreciate your hard work on this. I know this was not an easy challenge. So we do appreciate that. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve this rental plan.
My pleasure. Oh, this is maybe one thing. It's
Got it.
1310. The numbers are 1310, 4002. These are the policies that we're looking at.
She's doing it now.
1310 and 4002.
Okay. Mickey has made that motion. Is there a second?
Jimmy,
Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. It is 13104002.
maybe going, woohoo.
Thank you very much for that. Residential Life Committee is meeting and is working very hard, and I'm very happy to say that we are going to begin a volunteer program in our dormitory, and we're looking forward to getting that started. Many are excited to begin working with our students. Okay, Academic Curriculum Committee.
Me. We met on January the 24th. We had most of our members, and we also had several additional teachers, and I think we had a TA that joined us and contributed to the discussion. The main thing we're looking at from the last meeting was a spreadsheet of current and desired curriculum supports, materials, apps, programs, and we had gotten the grid that showed what we have now and what we'd like to have in the future, but there was a lot. So I asked them to get into their groups of elementary, middle, and high school and prioritize that list. So when we ask for money for these things, we'll know which are most important, because as in most things, you don't get everything you ask for. We also talked about coordinating with residential life people, which is what Sandy just said. The teachers are very excited about trying to have more collaboration with residential life, especially as it relates to information sharing about what's going on in school, what's going on in the dormitory, and also as far as homework, the dreaded homework, so that residential life knows what's expected for the day or for the evening to be done. So we had a really good meeting. We had 2 faculty members that shared with us that they have, one has already received a grant. Our agriculture teacher, Hannah Gordon, applied for a grant by the National Future Farmers of America. Which I can't say that. Future Farmers of America organization, and she has received a $5,600 grant. Listen to this. To get this, to take a trip this summer to Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. Purpose is to see agriculture practices there, especially hydroponics, which Anna is already teaching and demonstrating in her classroom, and also just to have the cultural experiences of meeting with other students who are planning to be farmers in the future. She's already refused all offers of baggage handlers, maids, whatever. She doesn't need things. So we're really excited for her that she's going to do this. And I just think it's great when teachers take the initiative to go out looking for things that would benefit themselves, but also benefit their students.
She's even getting spending.
I'm just like, wow. Also, another teacher, tell me.
Taylor Hughes.
Taylor Hughes. I have that written down on this page somewhere, but I don't see it. Taylor Hughes has been trying to, for a couple of years, get UCSD to apply for the federal Year Up grant, which can give a school up to $90,000 over 7 years. And it's for field trips, staff development, and classroom renovation, and is designed to help propel sixth grade students through high school. They follow this group beginning in sixth grade, and they follow them all the way through. And then, of course, 1 year graduates, and they add the next sixth grade group. And it's just to expose them to a lot of things and teach them a lot of things about postgraduate opportunities, college, community college, training programs, job opportunities. It just sounds wonderful. You know that word, though, federal grant. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed that that's still going to happen. Kristen, Dr. Todd, excuse me, would you share what exactly where we are in that process right now?
Well, we will be included as a sub-awardee if they are in fact funded. So the funding submission is with the federal agency, and it is through Appalachian State University. So once they hear if they are funded, then we will be included as a sub-awardee.
So that's amazing too. And I'm so glad that Taylor persevered and didn't give up when she was going, let's do this. And it didn't happen, but so now it's happening, and we're just really excited about that. And we'll just keep our fingers crossed that it will be funded. And I'll just say personally, to be with that group of mostly teachers, a lot of them are very young, so that's kind of cool. But they have so much energy and so much enthusiasm, and they just want somebody to say, yeah, do it. Or tell me what you want to do, and we'll see if we can make it happen. And they're just full of life and full of ideas and really want to see the best for UCSD. And that's the most amazing place I've been as far as all my work with the board has been being with that group of teachers. So what we need now is just kind of formalize these, let me see how I was supposed to say this. We need a motion to approve the receiving of these 2 grants that are already in the process. That good enough? Okay, do I have a motion? Amy?
I so move to accept the proposal of grant that we can take advantage of that grant money, because you never know when we can get that again, and it can be such a hard thing to get.
Did we have a second?
This is Tammy, I second that.
All in favor that we approve these grants? Raise your hand. Thank y'all.
This evening is just full of good news. Admissions, Dr. Warner?
Yeah, I'm sorry, this is Tammy. Yeah, I was going to talk about admissions next. The policy committee right now, we don't have anything new, but we are meeting next week on Wednesday. So we will.
I just want
This
to,
is Jimmy. I wanted to bring up something for discussion. Tammy was talking about admissions and just something to keep in mind. I know there's a lot of political clamor right now in the Department of Education, potentially maybe having some cuts. But for our program here, it potentially might be impacted, hopefully not, but it could be that, it's some issues with citizenship.
I'm happy
Our
to
students
tell
might
you
be
that
doing.
Dr. Todd has addressed that with legal, and they're taking care of that.
Okay.
Good. I just want to comment at the close of the reports that I have found in attending the committee meetings that we have a wonderful group of chair people, and everybody has just rolled up their sleeves and gone to work. And I knew we could if and when we had the opportunity to do so. But what I've also learned is that the staff in this school is phenomenal. And this village is going to accomplish great things. I have every confidence. The staff has jumped in and said, yes, let us help. So thank you on the behalf of the Board of Trustees for your coming to the table and helping us understand what you do every day and helping us be a part of your amazing workforce. Okay. Anybody else want to add to that? All right. I would like, and Paula doesn't know I'm going to say this, but as far as old business, our superintendent search, we have released the home. Released the hounds. In a wolf, a fox hunt. Paula, tell us how many surveys you've gotten back.
Oh, my goodness. I think close to 70.
We've gotten 70 surveys back that have been dispersed.
That is awesome.
And a reminder to everybody that the deadline for completing that survey is February 21st. After that, you will not be able to access it. So
It's on your main page.
it's on the main page of our website. So thank you all to everybody that's participating in that. It helps us understand what you desire in a leader. So with that, is there any other old business that needs to be brought up at this time? And I will add one thing to what Jimmy talked about just a little bit ago, and we talked about it today in the student behavior committee. This is a worrisome time for a lot of people and for some of our students. And I'm glad to say that this staff has taken that very seriously and is looking after that. Because some folks, I'm surprised from the school really. So we thank you for that too. Is there anything else?
Sandy, I'm sorry.
Sandy, what was the very last thing?
We thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for doing that, because Dr. Todd jumped on that and has been looking after it. At this time, do we have a motion to go into closed session? And our wonderful attorney will quote the reason we're going.
And just one question for the director. Do we have any student matters to discuss in closed session this evening? Okay, very good. So the motion, Madam Chair, would be to go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A1 to discuss confidential personnel matters under General Statutes, Chapter 132 and 115C, and House Bill 11 and Senate Bill 382. And also to discuss matters covered by the attorney-client privilege under A3, and also to discuss student matters that are confidential under Chapter 115C and the Family Education Rights Privacy Act.
I'm impressed. Do
We have a lot to do in closed session this evening.
I have a motion? So moved to. Wallace,
So moved.
so moved. Is there a second?
Second, Tammy.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. We will now proceed to closed session. Thank you all for being with us this evening. We appreciate it very much. Their applications.
Or to the director's recommendation
The
to hire.
the director's recommendation to hire.
Tammy
Two,
said I thought we had 3 positions.
there are, but there's 2 RLTs.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion to accept the director's recommendation to hire these 2 RLTs.
So moved.
Vicky has made a motion. Do I have a second? Candy's second. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, and do I have a motion to hire the RN?
Tammy, I move to accept the.
Okay, Do I have-
For the RN. For that position.
is there a second for that? All in favor? Okay, congratulations to those 3 hires.
Do you want to make the one statement about the
Oh,
superintendent search?
okay. The Board of Trustees has reviewed the applications received for superintendent and are asking for further information. And we will be informing the staff just as soon as we can and as we move forward in this process. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Don't everybody jump up at one time.
Tammy second.
Second, all in favor? Thank you, guys. I know this was a long night. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, good night.